All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Courtney Kramer. I am the Director of Animal Services for the City of Springdale, which is a really long title for a really important job. I think I'm the most important department in the city, but some of the other folks you're going to talk to tonight might not agree. Our department is responsible for picking up and taking in animals that either have lost their way or do not have a home to call their own anymore. So our department consists of animal control, which we have 3 officers that are on the street every day of the week. We have somebody on at least for an 8-hour shift, even on the weekends, for routine calls. And we are also on call 365 for emergency call-outs. So if something gets, hit by a car, if someone gets bit, crazy stuff, we're on call even at 3:30 in the morning to, pick up and help out in that situation. Animal control facilities historically exist to prevent the spread of rabies. So the biggest part of our job is usually picking up loose dogs and sometimes loose cats. We also deal with wildlife that's acting unusual or wildlife in places that it's not supposed to be. We take in around 2,500 animals every year. The majority of our animals tend to be dogs, but we take in about 900 cats as well, and the occasional pig, ferret, rabbit, whatever else decides to grace our doorstep. We have a small staff. We have 6 folks that work at the shelter to take care of the animals every day. We've got a couple front office staff and then myself and an assistant manager to handle the routine daily stuff, payroll and all the fun things of the animal shelter. We always have lots of volunteer opportunities. We would love to have you as much as you're able to come. We do a lot of offsite adoption events. Sometimes people don't want to come to the shelter because they think it's sad or they call it doggy jail, which we kind of always take a little bit of offense to, just because that kind of indicates that the animals are there because they've done something wrong, which in 99.9% of the times it's just the animal is lost or can't be taken care of by its current owners or whatever the situation is. We do have some, obviously, that are there because they bit somebody or were a little bit naughty, but the doggy jail stigma is not something that we're so proud of. So we are an animal shelter. We have a pretty low euthanasia rate. We are technically in the no-kill numbers now. When I started, that was not the case. 5 years ago, the euthanasia rate of the animals that came into the shelter was about 51%. So over half of the animals that we got didn't make it out of the facility. Last year, our euthanasia rate was less than 10%, and we're really super proud of that. That's not something that we do unless we absolutely have to, but we do get some very aggressive animals in. Not a whole lot, but there's some. There are certain illnesses and things that we can't treat. Right now, we actually have a couple of dogs that have contracted parvovirus recently, which is super contagious and is easily preventable if your dogs are properly vaccinated. But unfortunately, not all the animals that come in have been taken care of or seen a vet. So those are some things that we unfortunately are not able to deal with right now, but we're always working on ways to make things better. There's a lot of things that we used to have to say goodbye to a pet for that we are looking for new and innovative ways to handle that now. We always could use foster homes for especially neonatal kittens and puppies. We do get some animals that come in that don't have a mom that still need them. Those animals need to be fed every 2 to 3 hours around the clock, and we just don't have the staff to always be able to do that. So if you're interested in taking home some kittens, we still are in the middle of kitten season. It is tapering off, so hopefully the last bunch of bottle kittens are at the shelter right now, but next spring it'll start up all over again. So we always do stress the importance of spaying and neutering your pets to make sure that unwanted litters of animals are not being brought into the world when they don't have a family necessarily to love them. But that being said, we're here to help in situations like that. Right now I have 4 bottle kittens at my house. They're not bottle kittens anymore, but they're still tearing up my bathroom and shredding all the toilet paper every single evening. And sometimes you come home and get the eye twitch because you're like, again, guys, really? This stuff's expensive, but at the same time, it makes up, there's nothing like starting with a little critter at your house and then seeing them through to being adopted into a loving family, even though sometimes they're messy. But other than that, we would love to talk to you if you guys have any questions. I'm going to try to come back for the question and answer session later on this afternoon. Like I said, I got a little bit of a situation because when you're dealing with animals, nothing is ever 9 to 5. It's a 24-hour job. but it's very worthwhile. So if you guys have any questions right now that I can answer quickly, please let me know. Go ahead. We do want you to be 18 to volunteer, just because sometimes our animals are kind of unruly and, things happen. But we welcome you and your family anytime. And then once you hit the magic number, as much or as little as you want to come, you're absolutely welcome to do that. Anybody else? I know that was a really super down and dirty overview of our department, but, we're here for the citizens of Springdale. Obviously, our primary objective is to keep all of you guys, your families, and friends safe. You don't want a random animal running out in the street and getting hit by a car, causing an accident. But at the same time, we are the advocate for the four-legged residents of Springdale as well. So,
what steps did you take to lower the euthanization rate?
Our social media has been a really big asset to our department. We were using Pet Finder and Adopt a Pet before, but we also did create a Facebook page that we try to update daily or every other day as best we can, so that if your dog or cat is at the shelter, especially over the weekend when we're closed on Sundays, you at least know, if you can find it in the album, that your dog is being taken care of and is safe where it's at, and you can always contact us on Monday to come pick it back up. We have had a couple of staff members also take over our Instagram account, and it's been bringing in a lot of folks as well. Instagram's a little bit more fun and sassy and millennial than Facebook. So, we've had a lot of success with that as well. We also work with more off-site adoption events and also more local and out-of-state rescues. So sometimes there's breed-specific rescues for a particular type of dog, or we've had a dog that came in. It actually didn't have eyes. It was born that way. And of course, we have to have kind of a morbid sense of humor sometimes in our job. So his name was actually Mr. Peeps. And Mr. Peeps went to a rescue called Lovey Loaves in Orlando, Florida, that specializes in special needs animals. And he has his own Facebook page now, and he is a celebrity in his own right. And a dog like that might not have been easily adoptable in Springdale, but there is a place that he could go and be safe and adopted into a new family. So, we're kind of trying to think outside the box and get them more exposure via the internet and also offsite events, and also increasing our foster and volunteer program and networking with different places that we hadn't even thought of to, get them into new families. Anybody else?
Do you offer your services to rural areas or just city?
Our department is in charge of just animals that are in Springdale city limits, but Springdale does have some pretty rural parts too. So, we do have to deal with some livestock. Sometimes cows get out. We have to get them back in the fence and help with that. We've had to deal with horses, goats occasionally, chickens that aren't supposed to be in town that people have in town that we have to help them relocate. Occasionally we have a potbelly pig that, again, people aren't supposed to have in town, but they show up. Howard the Ham is an Instagram sensation. He is a former resident of Springdale Animal Services, and he got himself a pretty awesome home, so that was nice. He lives in Bella Vista now. He doesn't live in Springdale city limits, but he's a pretty cool guy. So there are facilities for Benton County and also Washington County. Washington County has its own animal shelter for the unincorporated rural parts of Washington County, and Benton County has a contract with the Humane Society for Animals in Rogers. So that's who would take animals that are found outside of city limits in those areas.
We have time for another question. If anyone has one. Oh, okay.
What's your favorite part about your job?
It's different every day. You come into work and it's, kind of the same daily grind. This week we have to do payroll, we have to do bills and deposits and all that kind of stuff, and, trying to figure out just normal daily activities, employee issues and things like that. But you never know what's going to come through the door, and you never know what kind of situation you're going to find yourself in. And sometimes the situation is really heart-wrenching and hard to deal with, and other times it's just something completely unexpected and really fun. I mean, it really is different every day, and that makes it kind of fun and cool. And it also makes you think on your feet. You know, different situations with animals with injuries that they have, coming up with ways to raise the extra money to pay for treatment. Things like femur fractures were something that we weren't able to afford. The city takes great care of us, but these things are just way outside of our normal budget and things that we can normally do. So using things like U-Caring and chip in to have people help donate to causes like that, just trying to come up with different ways to solve problems is always really interesting and fun. It keeps you on your toes. So I like that part.
All right, thank you very much, Courtney.
Sure.
We appreciate all your help.
Thank you for having me, Melissa.
All right, next up we have Public Works.
I got a question for you all. Who all went to Monitor Elementary? Did you go through Mrs. Goad's class? Did you fail or did you get through it? Okay, got through it. Yes, I remember. Twice. Well, my name's Sam Goad. I'm the Public Works Director. And the Public Works Department can also, you could also say it's the Street Department. It probably makes more sense to call it the Street Department. We fix things that break, basically is what we do. Very rarely do we build new things, although we have built some new roads in years past. We built Hilton Road that runs past the junior high out there and now runs in front of more schools out in that neighborhood. Right now we're doing site work for a fire station training facility, which you will probably get an opportunity to see at some point in your movements around the city. We have 900 lane miles of streets that we have to take care of. If you would drive down, a lane mile is, say, a 3-lane road, and it's a mile long, that'd be 3 miles of street. If you were to drive down every mile of streets that we have, every lane mile, it would be the same as driving to Denver, Colorado, and making about a quarter way back to Arkansas. So a lot of things occur on 900 lane miles of streets. When you're out driving around after attending and hearing what I have to say, just take note of everything that's on the street. There's a gazillion signs on the street. If you look over, you'll see curb and gutter and storm drains and line markings and just all kinds of things that are associated with the street. If you see a pothole, then you should call me immediately so we can get it fixed. But there are a lot of things to do in keeping our infrastructure repaired. Recently we had a significant flood in April of this year that the president made a declaration to fund repairs through FEMA. It completely tore out one of our bridges on Pump Station Road. That bridge is being replaced in about 2 years, which seems like a long time, through a federal bridge replacement program. So when something like that happens, you know, it's a little skinny 1-lane bridge on Pump Station Road that takes you down around Lake Springdale to the Lake Springdale trailhead. It's very aggravating when something like that happens. It's going to cost, when it's all said and done, about $1 million to replace that bridge to a proper 2-lane bridge. So things that seem very simple in the world of streets can get really complicated in a hurry and very expensive. Our budget this year is going to be around $8 million, and we operate our department through various divisions. We have, with all of our temporaries, about now 75 employees. We have in our department a division called Community Engagement, which you're going to hear from the supervisor of that division here shortly about what they do. So our job is to keep things in repair, the streets, drainage systems, signs, markings, the traffic signals, which have become quite a significant responsibility for us now. As the city has grown, we have added roadways, but not to the extent that we've actually kept up with the population. So you have to maximize every opportunity in the roadway to keep traffic moving. So the traffic signal system, which we now have almost 100 traffic signals, has become very complex, very complicated. A lot of our signals are hooked up by fiber optic and radio to where they talk to each other. At some point, if we had an opportunity to have you learn more about that through our traffic signalization supervisor, you would be quite fascinated by what's involved in that. But at any rate, I'm glad that you're all interested in city government. I want to ask you another question. I want you to tell me the truth. Who amongst you has put their name down to be elected president? Well, there we go. 3 of you. Well, that's really good. So you're just ready to dive right in there and take full responsibility, right? So do you see yourself someday being the mayor of Springdale? All right. There you go. Why fool around? Just get right on up there. Well, it's very encouraging to see all of you step forward and start learning about government operations from the municipal aspect of it. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to have an opportunity to see some things and learn some things that a lot of people do not. I hope that as you progress through your young life, that you will have the opportunity to go through Springdale leadership class. I understand you have to be 25 years old to go through that class. I didn't know that, but when that opportunity comes forward, take advantage of it. You'll really love it. So, any questions for me?
What seems to be the issue that you face most, whether it be fixing the roads or fixing the traffic lights? What seems to be the most reoccurring issue that you have to keep up with?
Oh, a reoccurring issue. Probably the most reoccurring issue, strangely enough, are drainage issues and traffic issues with regard to speeding through neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. We get a lot of requests for speed bumps, they call it. And we very much resist just running out there and putting a speed bump on a street, because in short order, everybody in the neighborhood or whoever drives through that part of town gets very aggravated. And mm-hmm. almost always it has to be removed, so we just don't do it. There's other ways to handle those issues. For instance, you'll be hearing from our police department. So someone that thinks they need to speed through the neighborhood, after getting a couple of tickets and getting in their pocketbook, they'll see the advantage of not doing that. We have drainage complaints, which are tied very closely to the volume of rain that we may get during a period of time. We try to address those. Some of them we can address legally if we have a means whereby to get on the property and make corrections or whatever. But I would say traffic in general, people want to get from point A to point B, and drainage issues. Of course, are something we address almost on a daily basis. In the winter, we have a very robust snow removal program, which we haven't got to use over the last 2 years because it's been so mild. But I've heard through the grapevine that this winter is going to be different. So we may get to use more of our equipment. Any other questions? I hope I was able to answer that.
No, you're fine. Yes, thank you.
What process did you have to go through in order to become Director of Public Works?
Well, you just have to be crazy enough to take the job, really, because part of my job is talking to the public and trying to help them with problems they may perceive as being something we should be helping them with, which I don't mind. But ideally, you have to have a background in municipal management. I've been at it since, I guess, I hate to tell myself here, but I think it's like 35 years that I've been in some sort of municipal management responsibility. If some of you are interested in engineering, if it's something you like, then certainly pursue that. Civil engineering is a specialty that dovetails closely with the municipal position, like Brad Baldwin is our staff director of engineering, and you could be an electrical engineer course or a mechanical engineer, but if you're interested in working for the city, civil engineering is probably the most advantageous specialty to pursue. Any other questions?
Right. This will be the last question.
Last one. Okay, better be a good one.
How do potholes happen?
The what?
How do potholes happen? Like, like
Yeah, okay. They, a lot of times they happen because the surface of the asphalt begins to open up through age and called like alligator cracking, they call it. And then when, especially in the winter, when moisture gets in those cracks underneath the asphalt and then freezes and thaws and it pops it out. A road should last 20 years before it has to be resurfaced. Sometimes they do, sometimes you have to do it sooner than that. But one thing we do, we have what I feel is a very robust pothole patching program. And we depend on the public to call us. And because there again, who's going to drive 900 lane miles of roads every day? Not us. And so they do call us, say, hey, you got a hole popping up in the road. Can you do something about it? We have a $200,000 pothole patching machine, so we get it out and go fix it, you know. So, but it's one of the things, you know, you got to stay on top of, because the driving public wants to have a smooth road to ride on. But anyway, if you find one, call me.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam. Now make sure you guys are thinking about your job shadow and which department you think that you would enjoy spending 4 hours of your time with. Here's Mike Shamley. He's with the building department.
She stole my thunder. That was my whole opening line. I'm Mike Shamley. I'm the chief building official. Work for y'all. I oversee the building department, which is commonly known as the building inspections department. I'm kind of like Sam. I got a lot of questions, though. My first one is, who can remember being a little kid and thinking, man, I want to be a building inspector when I grow up? Yeah, me neither. I was asking for a friend. But anyway, what we do is we oversee all construction in the city of Springdale. If you want to build something, whether it be a new home, a new office, a new church, a new school, whatever it is, you draw a permit, and we ensure that you've met the minimum standards that are required. Building codes are not a new thing. They've been around since the time of the ancient Egyptians. They had more simple codes, more like if you build me a house and it kills my family, I get to kill you. Whereas now we're just very specific. Make sure you've got a deep footing so it doesn't have frost to even cause potholes in the floor, that type of deal. But it is something we see a lot of because we are in a growing area, both in Springdale and Northwest Arkansas. Lots of things require permits that people don't know about. Things from storage buildings that would fit about in this area here, about 120 square foot, all the way up to, 5-story hotels or the children's hospital or the schools you go to. And all those things are inspected by inspectors that are set by a standard of codes that are set by the International Code Council. But in addition to new construction, sometimes we get involved because of disasters. A car hits a house, a fire occurs that burns down a building where you go. Perhaps the ice storm was a few years ago. Those type of things also involve us, and we go out and we try to help the people come back from whatever problems they're having and make sure they, again, have a safe place to live, work, and play. We deal with demolitions. If you want to tear something down to build something new, you come see us. We make sure you have that process down, help you with any state regulations you have to take care of, and we go through that process with you. We work with property maintenance. That's kind of one of the things it's a side product of our job. It's set by the city through ordinances. We have a property maintenance code. Sometimes properties get a little run down. They get that peeling paint, they're rotted, the windows are broken out. It's usually abandoned houses or foreclosed buildings, things of that nature, where you really don't want to see vagrants hanging out or where criminal activity can occur. And if the owner won't or can't take care of it, then we have to go in and kind of help persuade them to make sure they make the right decision on how to proceed with that, which in turn could lead back in a circle to demolition or to getting it rehabbed and utilized as a productive building for everybody to enjoy again. We do that sometimes working with the police department. We have a program here called SNAP. Misha will probably talk about it a little bit next, but it involves our department, community engagement, the police department, the fire department, planning, city attorneys, several departments. It's where we work together, again, on nuisance properties, properties perhaps that have had drug activity or criminal activity, or again, have just been run down and not been taken care of. And we come together as a city and address all the issues at once rather than me calling you today, someone else calling you tomorrow, and someone else the next day, and then you're really ticked off because the city's picking on you. So we go from there on that part of it. Anybody ever have a garage sale? Yeah. Probably made your fortune, right? Garage sales are very lucrative. We do sell garage sale permits. It's kind of a little sideline business we have on the side. $10 come in, we'll let you have one for a couple of days. Not a big deal. You have it at your house. You can't have it at a commercial business. You can't have it at your school. You can have it at your church. But it's twice a year, 2 days each time. That takes care of that. We deal with signs. Who hates to see all the signs plastered all over town? You see them. I'll buy your house. I love ugly houses. Nobody? Z mattress? Come on. You never see the signs. It's just me. I got to get out more. Which one? Oh, yeah. Signs everywhere. We deal with signs. Have you seen the new retro sign for Tyson downtown? It's the chicken sticking out from the wall. Is that cool or what? I really like that sign. Hope we see more of those downtown. You probably have seen kind of behind me, hopefully some pictures going through. I don't know. Is that scrolling? As we go, there's a few odd signs and a few signs that are really cool that have come up lately. And I think we're going to see more and more signs, especially in the downtown area, as we see more development come in, that are going to be kind of unique signs, not the ones you normally would see with just channel letters or words on the wall. I look forward to seeing that and what's going to happen. I will tell you, these are not my vacation pictures. There's some odd pictures we've had from different times. Places got tore down, places being built, signs, demolitions, a burned up bus, whatever. Just some different things you got to have there. What have I forgot to tell you? You want to build a doghouse? You don't need me. You want to build a storage building? I'm your guy. You want to build a new house? I'm your guy. Put a sign up? I'm your guy. What questions do you have?
Why do you have to have a permit to do a garage sale?
You know what? I'll tell you, it's a question I've heard so many times, and I really don't have the best answer, but I will tell you what the thought is. Of course, it's set by the city council. Everything we do is either governed by ordinance or by a code. And things that are by ordinance are always set by city council. And the reasoning behind that is they don't want you to essentially run a business out of your house. Now, I know y'all wouldn't do that, but believe it or not, there are people in Springdale who would probably have a garage sale like every other weekend if it weren't regulated. So that's why we have to have permits, so we know you're only having 2 a year.
I know you're talking about some of the regulations for some of the sales that, whether it be garage sales or whatever it might be. Are you involved in people selling cars at all? Because I know a lot of people do that on their own property. They put it in the front of their lawn trying to sell it. I wonder if you touch any of that at all.
You know, I really don't. That's going to be Miss Wagner next. And she's going to love to talk to you about parking on the grass and where you can sell your cars and all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, I'll let her tell you. I don't want to steal her thunder.
Thank you.
All right, well, okay, sell your car, keep it on the driveway, make sure it's your car, you're selling from your house. No parking in the grass ever.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet, man. What else?
On the average day, like how many requests for buildings come up to you?
For new buildings to be built?
Yes, sir.
You know, it's rough to really give an average, and I'll tell you why I say that. We've had days where we might have 20 new house permits submitted to us, and then we might go for a week with nothing. I would tell you on average you do between 500 and 700 new permits per year, but that does kind of come in waves.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you have to limit the permits that you give out to build a house? So like something like the housing market crash that happened a few years back wouldn't happen, or is that
You
just
know, that
city
actually
planning?
is not something we would regulate. You're John, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Morrison?
Do you know my dad?
I do. And no matter what he and your
Yeah.
grandfather say, I'm a good guy. Great guys, really. I digress really quick. Ted and Steve, his father and grandfather, great guys and been builders. In fact, I will say, just really quick stepping back, we're so blessed in Northwest Arkansas, especially Springdale, to have good builders, adequate codes, good support from our council, making sure we have these things enforced to provide these safe places. But to answer your question, no, sir, as long as there's a market out there, the market drives how construction goes. It is very much self-regulating.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mike.
Thanks, guys.
Now we have Misha coming up here next. I want you to take a look at your org chart that I handed out to you. There's a very important distinction I have down here. You'll notice in dark green, I have bulky waste recycling program and graffiti removal under Public Works, and then community engagement separate under the mayor. That is not currently how it's laid out. However, that is the plan for 2018. The 2018 budget has community engagement broken out as its own department, and bulky waste recycling and graffiti to stay under Public Works. So that's why it's a little bit of a different color, because that's not quite the way it is now, but if City Council approves the budget, that's the way it will be next year. So Misha can take it from there.
So I'm going to talk to you about how it is now instead of how it's going to be. So community engagement is right now a division of Public Works, but it will stand alone. And we have 4 different functions, and I'm going to go through them real quick. First of all, our enforcement function is our code enforcement. But we also have some service functions, and those service functions are the bulky waste program, the graffiti abatement program, and the recycling center. Now, to me, it's quite important to have both of those functions. You don't just want to be the strong arm, right? We want to be able to offer something to our residents too, some ways to fix things and help them out. The next slide shows kind of what our foundation and our base is for all of our division or department. And I'm going to go ahead and just call it department. But we go by the broken windows theory. In 1984, you've heard of it, yes. 1984, 2 criminologists came up with this theory that if you take the worst property in an area, one with the broken windows and that looks the worst, and you go in and you fix the windows, you paint it, you clean it up, you put a facelift on it, that other people in the area will start to mimic those things and improve. It also shows that the theory said that signs of disorder, like broken windows, litter, graffiti, and other types of disorder, they encourage things like crime, petty crime, gang activity. So it's very important for us to improve what we can improve. And we have amazing codes, amazing ordinances in place. Mike stated it earlier. We have great support of our council, great support of all the other departments. And so we work really well together. The next one has a couple of pictures. So again, the broken window theory. When you have a property that looks like what's up on the top, you give perceptions of disorder in that area, crime in that area, that maybe it's unsafe for you to raise your family. Your family's going to drive by that and go, no, 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 I don't want my kids there. Or even that it's cheap, and that we don't want people to drive through Springdale and go, Springdale's just cheap. We like inexpensive, but we don't like cheap, right? So you like to buy clothes on sale, you just don't want everybody to know that, yeah. So when we take this property, and if you can see it, up here on the top, you've got the tall grass and weeds. There's a broken window right up there. It's just been unloved, abandoned. But then you take something and you put a facelift on it, fix it up, mow the yard, plant some plants, and then you have put in a pride of ownership in that. You've increased those property values across the cities, which is very important to our community. And you've encouraged growth, and you've made it a great, desirable place to live. And I don't know if you guys know it, but we were number 3, right? What number were we, the city of Springdale, in small communities? I can't remember if it was. Yes.
We're the 6th fastest growing small city, 17th fastest growing overall.
That's pretty amazing for the city of Springdale. Oh, that's the country. That's not in the state of Arkansas, right? So that's pretty huge. So that's what we want. We want to be a desirable place to live. Now, code enforcement, community engagement, all the employees have a way that we think. And the next slide shows that when we think or when we act, we think in ripples, because we know that every action that we do creates a ripple. So, and this is life. This isn't just how we do our jobs, but this is how we should think about how we live our lives. The decision that we make doesn't just affect us. It ripples out. It affects who's close to us. Maybe it's our parents. Maybe it's our grandparents. Maybe it's our friends. Maybe it goes down and it goes down and it goes down. So every decision, every action creates ripples, and it affects other people. So some of the ripples that we think about, I'm going to kind of break out code enforcement for just a minute, is when we go to a property and we see violations at a property, we're not necessarily thinking about that property. We're thinking about the property next door and maybe 2 doors down, or maybe the senior lady that's lived there for 25 years and she's done pretty good taking care of her property, or maybe we're thinking about the neighborhood over, or the apartment complex that's going and the kids that are walking through. So we're always considering ripples and how the decision we make on each individual property affects everyone as a whole, and it just keeps going and going and going. So violations, you guys are going to help me look at some violations. We talked a bit kind of about our service functions that we have, our bulky waste program. This is unique to the city of Springdale. The other areas around us don't have anything like this. The bulky waste program is for residents to call in the city, pick up large items, mattresses, sofas. You guys have seen this stuff, riding around with your parents, or maybe you've put something out. So it's a great service. Your parents pay 55 cents a month, and for a total of what, somebody with math, $6.55, $7, something like that a year. And we'll pick up 16 cubic yards of junk and trash for them. So that's a great service that works really well with our code enforcement. We have graffiti abatement. How many of you know when you drive by something that has been tagged with graffiti, you just kind of go, It just doesn't look good. It doesn't make you feel good. It doesn't make you take pride and ownership. It actually kind of makes you a little nervous, kind of scares you just a little bit. Well, the city has a program where our commercial properties, our businesses, they pay $1 a month on their water bill. And that $1 a month goes to pay for us taking off and removing graffiti. It's a crime. It happens. It's not the fault of the property owner, and nor should they be punished for it. So the city says, well, let us partner with you. Let's come along. We'll help you. We'll remove it at our own cost, and then that $1 pays for it. We remove it off commercial and we remove it off residential. And then the third service program that we have is our recycling center. Recycling is growing, and we're thinking more green. You guys, you younger ones, you've grown up with green. Some of us are just getting on the bandwagon because we were really used to just throwing it in the trash. So now we're having to rethink, and we have a great facility that will take those recyclables. So if you need more information on that, we can get that. If you want a tour, we can do that too. If you want to come help, we can do that too. So some of our violations that we say, our codes and ordinances, some of the biggest ones that we enforce would be spring and summer. Can you guys guess? What's a big violation in spring and summer? What? Yard mowing, tall grass and weeds, absolutely. It's everywhere. Nobody likes to mow their yard. We just have to do it. So we write about 5,000 to 6,000 violation notices every spring and summer for tall grass and weeds. Did you know if you have a house and it has a front yard and a backyard, that you probably need to mow both the front yard and the backyard? It just seems logical, doesn't it? Many people in Springdale don't see the logic in that, so they'll mow the front and they'll leave the back. Well, whenever you let your grass grow in the back, it encourages rodents, it encourages snakes, it encourages fleas and ticks and mosquitoes, and The residents all around you are getting to share in your bounty. So we want to make sure that we take care of that. Parking in the grass. Mr. Shamley said it a while ago. It is a pet peeve. Nobody likes parking in the grass. To me, tires need to stay on some kind of concrete or asphalt surface, and grass isn't it. So we hit it hard. We don't want property values to be diminished just because somebody pulls right up into their grass. We do have an exception to the parking in the grass. We do allow one, but we allow it opposite the front door. And many people say, why can I park it over here but not in front of the door? It's easier for me to park it right here in the front door. How many of you would like to be in a situation where you have to call emergency services? Someone in your home is having an emergency and they need someone to come in with a gurney, a fire truck, an ambulance to access your front door. And yet there's a vehicle parked right in the middle of it and they have to maneuver around that. So for safety reasons, we need to make sure that our front areas stay clear. Let's look at some of the violations we've got. So you guys help me, and you tell me what you see in this picture. What do you see? What? Junk. Junk and trash. There's an inoperative vehicle right there. That's an open carport. And yet, is that fair for the neighbors to have to live by? Look, there's a toilet. Do you want to go home from work and drive up next to a toilet, whether used or not? Of course not. So let's go to the next one. Let's see what else we can find. This is someone's backyard. It's kind of hard, a little distorted. See that pile of junk, and there's tires? Tires are one of the best incubators for mosquitoes. So if you have a tire, it's going to hold water, and your mosquitoes are going to love it, and they're going to eat you alive. So right behind all of that huge pile of junk in that backyard, there's chickens. You can't see them, but they're back there, and they're nasty. So let's go to the next one. Oh, sorry for the bad word, but does this make you feel like you're safe and you want to come to the city of Springdale and you want to raise your family here? Absolutely not. So our graffiti abatement program is incredibly important. Let's keep going. Let's go faster. So just ugly. Look at the beautiful house in the background. Wouldn't you like to go out your garage or look outside and see that incredible view? What's next? The grass is mowed wonderfully. It really looks quite nice, but yet the fence, does it look like anybody takes care of that? No, of course not. A few little screws would take care of that really quickly. So we could go on and on and on. I have a ton of pictures, but I want to leave time if you guys have any questions, and I just talk too much anyway. But, oh, here's a good one. This is parking in front of the front door, and look, they rutted it up so bad that they had to scoot over so they could continue to rut up the rest of the yard. So does that help our property values in the city of Springdale? Of course not. It's just ugly and unattractive. So our codes are for multiple reasons. Our codes are for safety, security, health, but they're also because you deserve a nice place to live. If you're going to take care of your property, shouldn't your neighbor have to take care of their property? And if we can educate people on the expectations of how we want them to live, that just helps us as a community as a whole. So our goal is not to be punishers. Our goal is to be educators and to help people.
So what would you do if, say, your neighbor parked in your yard and then left tire marks? How would you go about doing that?
In your yard or in their yard? In your yard, you would call code enforcement.
Okay.
Let us deal with it.
So I'm sure an issue that you face all the time is the parking in the grass. What if someone tried to evade that by putting cement to say, oh, that's part of my driveway, I added a part, or is it possible for them to take off all their grass and fill it all with cement just so they can't park in their technically lawn?
Good question. So we do have codes and ordinances, and many of our building codes, they all kind of congeal together. So there is a rule that you cannot do more than 40% of your front yard in concrete. It's just not attractive to some. So you can expand your driveway, but there's certain rules. Again, you have to stay so far off the property line because maybe your property neighbor doesn't want concrete right on the edge, but you can expand, and there are some options for you, but it would need to be done in concrete. So if anyone says, well, just bring in some gravel. No. Gravel is a bad word. So.
What is the problem that you see a lot in your career?
Oh, goodness. I think our biggest problem is people just don't know that there are rules they need to follow. A lot of people, we're just living our lives, right? We get up, we go to work, we take care of our kids, we fix our dinners, and we don't think outside of that box. So I think just the education and knowledge of our citizens, letting them know what the expectations are. I'm sure none of you could probably sit down with a big code book and go, I know exactly where this is and every single rule. I can't do that. So educating our citizens and our residents.
All right, thank you, Misha. Started here. Our next speaker is Patsy Christie, and she'll go over all the amazing things she does. You guys kind of bumped into her still at work upstairs, so here you go.
Does this microphone works? Thanks everybody for being here. Y'all got to walk around and look into my office and you saw all kinds of pieces of paper in there, didn't you? I have a question for you. If you could build anything in the city of Springdale, what would it be? What would you like to see that we don't have in Springdale right now? Anybody? An amusement park, okay. Cheesecake Factory, okay. Yes, sir. A racetrack. What kind of a racetrack? Cars racetrack, okay. What else? I'm surprised you guys didn't say Chick-fil-A. Every meeting I go to, everybody says we need Chick-fil-A, and if we get Chick-fil-A, we're okay. Well, let me tell you, we may get one of these days, but Cheesecake Factory is a good one too. So where would you want to put this? If there was a race track put in Springdale, where would you want it to be? Okay. Like for a drag strip? Okay. If we had a Cheesecake Factory, where would you want to put that? Next door to your house? Yeah. So you could walk over there every night and have cheesecake before you go to bed? Okay, that's a good idea. Okay. One of the things that we do in the planning office, this is the Planning and Community Development Office, is to look at developments as they come into cities. Think about it. Cities don't build cities. The city government is not what builds cities. We build infrastructure. We build roads, we build water and sewer so buildings can come in, but it's the developers out there who are willing to risk their dollars is what builds cities. You know, big companies like Walmart and Tyson's and J.B. Hunt and those, and small mom and pop shops that build on the corner of your neighborhood. Those are the kinds of things that we look at. I told people I got into planning because I'm nosy. I want to know what's going in. I want to know what that building is on the corner. And trust me, people ask me every day, well, what is that building going in on the corner over there? And you really have to know that stuff. Fortunately, most of the time I know. Occasionally it's a remodel or something I don't know about. But you know, it's not just helter-skelter on how we do development in Springdale because we want to have some sense of how development occurs. Melissa, can you get my... Okay, can you put up the master street plan for me? We have what's called a master street plan in Springdale. It's important to be able to get across town. How many of you are drivers? Are y'all careful drivers? Okay, that sounds pretty good. Do you think about how you get across town? Did you ever think about how you get to school every day? Is there a faster way to get there? Do you look at that sometimes, some mornings when you got up late and you're going to be late to school, you got to look for a faster way to... We have a master street plan that sets out traffic patterns across cities. We have arterial streets, which is like Highway 71 and the I-49 and 412 that comes through towns and the new 412 bypass. Then we have collector streets and minor collector streets and major collector streets that are designed to pick up traffic from larger areas to be able to move them across town. How many of you have ever been on Don Tyson Parkway? Do you use that quite a bit? That's one of those new major collectors we built across town so you can get from the east side of town to the west side of town. Because think about it, I don't know, most of you probably weren't driving or thinking about how you got across town before Don Tyson Parkway was built, more than likely. Your mom took you to school and you didn't pay any attention on how to get there. It has opened up travel across that. We had 3 corridors. We opened up Huntsville across town so you could get from 49 to the east side of town and Wagon Wheel Road. East-west traffic in northwest Arkansas has always been very tough to do. So that was one of the first major things that we started off. And before I talk anymore, I can do this for hours. You guys are just going to have to interrupt me if you have questions because I'll just keep on. So if you have a question, just stop me and ask a question. Then we had to look at how do you get north and south across town. That's a little bit easier if you're patient. Right now you can use 49 to go north and south across town if you're patient because the traffic backs up. Don't go at the wrong times of the day. We have Highway 71. That's a good north-south corridor through town. It sometimes gets really bogged down during peak times. And then we have Highway 265. Right now we're in the process of developing a project with the Highway Department to extend 265 from where it ends now at Randall Wobie to go all the way up to 264. So you'll have another north-south. And one of the other projects we've been working on over the years is 56th Street, which is out by the Children's Hospital and the Arvitz Ballpark. So it'll go north and south. So you'll be able to move across town that way. Then we develop local streets that tie into that so you can move across town. Once you develop a street pattern like that, we know how we can move traffic. Then we move on to look at where's the best place to build certain kinds of things. Can we go to the land use plan? And if you look at it, you'll see that most of the commercial development is concentrated along those major streets. Highway 412. When you drive down 412, what do you see along there? All kinds of different kind of businesses, right? Yes, yes. Okay.
So, say 2 businesses want to be in the same place. What determines who gets to be on that?
Well, sometimes it could be as simple as, is the building large enough for 2 of them to go in at the same location? Usually the market takes care of that. I mean, when you build a new building in town or bring in a new business, you got to have a building that meets the commercial design standards. It has to meet the building code. It has to meet the fire code, and you have to have paid parking. Some people can afford to do all that. They move forward with their projects. We try to work with developers as much as we can. Go pick out a piece of property that you think you want to build on and let us work together and see if we can work out a way that you can get that building on that piece of property. I don't ever remember in all my years of doing this that we've had a conflict where 2 are fighting over the same piece of property. We've usually been able to work with them and try to figure out how we can work both of them or try to find an alternate connection for those. So that's usually where you see commercial development is along those major streets. And usually buffering those right behind those, you'll see what we call a higher density residential development. Something like apartment complexes, townhomes, duplexes like that that create a little higher density. And then most of the area you see on the maps is yellow. That's the lower density residential developments. You also see on there some areas that are where the schools are, called public locations. The things that drive development the most in a city is the location of a school and where is their infrastructure. By infrastructure, I mean where are the streets that you can get to it, and is there water and sewer to service that. So we work a lot with the street department, with the engineering department, with the water and sewer department, so we know where those kind of improvements are going to happen, so we know what kind of land use can go into those areas. Now, they'll come to us and say, well, where do you think the development's going to occur? And we kind of talk back and forth because nobody really has a crystal ball that's going to tell you exactly how this stuff is going to happen. Is this plan set into concrete where it can't change? No. Because the market drives what's really going to happen in Springdale. Yes, sir. If it's a new subdivision, like a commercial subdivision or a residential subdivision, the developer submits the list of names he wants to use. And as long as there's not a conflict with the 911 system, because it all ties to emergency services, so if you call, they know where they go to meet you, so it can't be a conflicting name. That's how those names are established. Occasionally, we've gone in and renamed streets after individuals who've made great contributions to the city. Don Tyson Parkway was renamed. It was really 3 different streets, and the mayor and city council decided to change the name of that to Don Tyson Parkway. Just recently, 56th Street has been renamed to Jean George Boulevard. So those happen. But for the most part, it's whoever's developing them gets to establish what the names are. Okay? Any other questions before I move on? Okay. The other thing that we look at is, where are the industrial areas? Where are the places where manufacturing is going to occur? And you'll see those on the map are the bluer areas, and they're located along the railroad track or major road locations, because it's important to be able to get goods and materials into those locations so they can operate. So that's usually where you look at your industrial areas. It's just as important to protect an industrial area from some kind of encroachment, somebody moving in and building a house next door to it, and tomorrow they don't like it because the noise of the industry is too much. Then you get that conflict. So you protect your industrial areas from residential development just as well as you protect your residential areas for industrial development. Nobody wants to live next door to something that makes a lot of noise all night and you can't sleep. Everybody wants to be able to sleep. We set standards for what the buildings look like if they're commercial, what kind of materials they can have on the outside, a limited color palette, not really limited, but some high intensity colors is not the thing we're going to let people use as primary colors, so that we have a standard for that. In the area around the ballpark and where Children's Hospital is going in, there is a standard for that. It is an overlay district, and the element that you're going to see the most out there is the rock that's on the ballpark. Will be carried out through all the elements in that. If you look at Children's Hospital, it has that rock. When you go into that area, you will know you're in part of that Southwest Overlay District, because there will be an element of that kind of rock throughout that. That's the only area that we have that standard. We have a new standard for the area downtown, which is bounded by Huntsville on the north, Cottle and Quant on the south, Highway 71 on the west, and the 265 and the airport on the other side. And we have a different kind of development code for that, where we actually look at what does it look like from the street side. If you can make the building meet the setbacks or the build 2 lines that's in that and make it meet all those standards, you can put anything in there that you want to. We're looking for mixed developments. In some areas, you've got to have residential on the ground floor, and then you can have other areas that you have to have commercial on the ground floor. So we want an active downtown area. That's something new else that we're talking about. So the overall development of the city is something we look at every day. Things are picking up again. We're getting all kinds of, it's a good time to be in Springdale, let's put it that way. We're getting a lot more proposals. The installation or the construction of Children's Hospital out on the west side of town is really creating a lot of interest in Springdale. Mercy Hospital is just where we're looking at a clinic for it next month to go at Elm Springs Road in 49. So those kind of things are major drivers. There will be other kinds of things that come in to support those major activities in those areas. The other thing that we look at, and something that we've looked at in the last few years, is a trail development plan or a master trail plan. How many of you have been on the Razorback Greenway? Okay, lots of you do. Ride bikes up and down that. I'm not prejudiced, but I'll tell you the prettiest portion of the Razorback Greenway is from downtown Springdale to Lake Springdale, where you go along the creek. Trail development has become a major portion of what we look at. How can areas of the city, residential and commercial, how can they be tied together with a trail? Instead of having to get your car out and fight the traffic every day, can you ride your bike? We're looking at ways to get back and forth to school, ways to get back and forth to employment on trail systems. There's lots of neighborhoods that you can't get to. So we're going to look into how do we develop more master trails in the area. We're also looking at, do any of you do mountain bike trails? The off-road, soft trail stuff that you ride up in the trees and stuff? No? We are developing some of those. There's one on the west side of town. We're looking at a big project on the east side of town, and then providing trails that you can connect those to. That's another amenity that we're looking at in Springdale. So those are the major things that's talked about in planning. If somebody wants to build something, They submit a set of plans to our office, and we get a chance to look at them. So it meets my curiosity. I get to know what's going on. Before I move on to the other section, which is community development, does anybody have any other questions? Am I doing okay time-wise?
Yeah, you got about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so my question is like, why? Well, like my main thing is about like the Mercy thing, because the sign has been on that plot of land for like ever. So like, why does it take so long for things to start being built?
Well, usually they will come in and buy a piece of property. Then they have to do a lot of work on the piece of property. They do testing to see what the soil's like. They hire an architect. They hire an engineer. They start laying it out. And a lot of times it takes quite a bit of time to get through that process. I don't think those signs have been up more than a year, though. This is Mercy. And then they have to develop, and they got to figure out how do you pay for it. I mean, you're talking about a several $1 million project at that location.
So like businesses will buy the land before they know if they can pay for it?
They know they can pay for it,
Oh,
but they just have to go through the process of designing it and laying out where do you put the parking lot. In a lot of cases, how do you take care of the drainage? You know, the water's going to run off the building and the parking lot. Where's it going to go? It can't flood somebody else. So they have to do all that kind of work and all that kind of study. How tall is the building going to be? What is the market asking for right now? So there's a lot of things that goes into developing. They may have some very general ideas of what they want to do. It takes a lot of refinement to get it done. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? We have one right here.
What about when a building needs to be torn down? Is there like people who decide that, or?
Well, we have, and I don't know if Misha got into that. We do have a program that we try to work with people to get commercial stuff rehabbed. And I'm going to talk about some housing rehab we do in just a minute. But there is a process that we go through. If it becomes unsightly and unsanitary, or it's unsafe to be in, it can be condemned. The property owner either has to bring it back up to the standard, or the city can force it to be torn down.
Okay.
There is a process to do that, yeah.
And what if a building like is perfectly good, but it's not what someone wants to be there? Can it be torn down?
Sure.
Or, okay.
Sure. Now, in a zoning classification, there's only certain things that you can do. If you are in a residential district and you want to tear down a house and build a business in the middle of it, you can't do that.
Okay.
But if you're in a commercially zoned district and you want to tear down a house and you want to build a business there, you can do that.
Okay.
Each one of the zoning classifications has a list of the things you can and can't do in those. Right.
Thank you.
So anybody have any other questions? That kind of gives me a lead into the next section of what we do. The next section is called Community Development Block Grant. The city of Springdale is an entitlement city. That means we get a grant from the Department of Housing and Urban Development every year. And that money is used to help property owners rehab their homes. We have a program that provides up to $35,000 to a property owner who owns a home that needs their house brought up into current standards. Lots of times the roof has to be fixed. It needs new heat and air. It needs new windows because they're not energy efficient. Those kind of things. The floor needs to be fixed and that kind of stuff. We can do a loan of $35,000 on that structure. And if that property owner lives there 10 years, they don't have to pay any of that money back. So it becomes a grant, but they have to live in that house for 10 years. If they decide to sell it before that time frame, there is a graduated scale, and that portion has to be put back into the program so that we can get to the next property owner. There are income qualifications that have to be met that are set by HUD that you can come in and apply for assistance to help bring your house up to standard. We also have a volunteer program that goes along with that. We can't always use our grant funds to paint and to put on gutters and to trim bushes and stuff. Our community development director works very well with groups that want to volunteer and come in and clean up someone's yard or paint the inside of a house or help get things done over and above what we can do with the grant money to bring this house up to the standard it needs to be. We have found if we can go into a neighborhood and there's one structure that may be deteriorating, if we can go in there and rehab that house and bring it back up, it helps stabilize the neighborhood. If things start deteriorating in a neighborhood with a couple of houses, it tends to kind of keep going that way. So we spend a lot of time trying to save our housing stock and to stabilize neighborhoods. We do have programs where we have bought houses. The Department of Housing and Urban Development used to have some houses that they had taken back where people couldn't afford to make the payments on them. They would sell them to the city for $1. We would buy that house for $1. We would do all the rehab work, and usually we do that work with volunteers, so we put the least amount of money we can into it, and then we make it available to a low-income family to have a new house that they haven't had before, had the opportunity to get before. We don't have very many of those left. There's not many dollar houses left. We have bought a few properties that we have upgraded, trying to keep them from having to be torn down if we can at all possible. So that's what the Community Development Block Grant Program does for it. It also provides, portion of the money can go to public service activities. We provide money to the Bread of Life and the House of Hope that makes direct, they purchase food where low-income people or people who do not have any food can come in and get food. They can get assistance with their utilities. House of Hope provides a place where they can come and do laundry. There are showers at that location. We also provide funding for a taxi and bus coupon program so that the elderly and or disabled can get coupons to pay for taxi services and or bus rides to get to doctor's appointments or to the grocery store, and those kind of things that we do. There's a limited amount of money that we put in that, but that becomes part of our direct assistance to low-income people. That's what we do with Community Development Block Grants. And it's kind of short. Am I out of time? I'm just about done. Any other questions? Any other subject? No? Okay. You're welcome.
I'm Brad Baldwin, and I'm the engineering director. Engineering here has probably 3 major roles. Some other communities have a 4th. We do regulatory work, which is stormwater and floodplain management. Is this on? There we go. We do construction administration, the big projects in town that you see, the Don Tyson Parkway. My guys supervise those and get them built. And then we have we're kind of tech support for other departments. The first one is stormwater is managed through what's called the grading permit program. We've got a guy that issues the permits, evaluates the stormwater pollution plans, and then goes out and inspects to make sure everybody's in compliance. That's going to be commercial construction projects. All the construction that you see going on in town will have a permit, and they've got to keep I call him the mud police. They've got to keep it cleaned up and keep the water cleaned up. Go ahead. So this would be an example of a site that Chris would visit. You can see construction on the left, and then there's a grass buffer zone and silt fence. You guys probably see that driving around. That's to keep the silt or the mud on site. You can't let it run down the creeks. You can't track mud in the roads. Chris will come after you if you do. Like I said, we provide assistance to other departments that might need it. In this case, we provide, we're like a consultant to other departments if they need help. We review the engineering aspects of development plans for planning. Anybody that has a technical question, they might bring it to us and we'll help them with it. We provide surveying and small design if needed. We review and approve all the storm drainage system designs in town. So a developer, a new subdivision, we'll review all the storm drainage that goes in, make sure that help reduce the flooding in town, make sure there's a system adequate to handle all the runoff. Okay. We have an inspector that the building department would inspect the construction, the building itself. Our inspector looks at the infrastructure that will become city-owned. Example, the curb and gutter, the sidewalks. He'll make sure that all the parking meets ADA requirements, street lights, those kind of things that on the bigger commercial projects have to go in, the requirements that go in with their development. On the large project administration, I mentioned that some cities have a fourth function for engineering. They would have a large design component. Here, the city council has said they want to use local consultants, put that money back into the community. So we don't do a lot of large design, but we supervise the folks who have city design projects and construction projects. Right now, we're working on the project 56th Street North from 412 up to Elm Springs Road, and that's being appraised to evaluate the cost of acquiring right-of-way where we're going to build the road. Our guys are coordinating with utilities. They'll go out and they'll find out where their utility conflicts. You know, everything's buried anymore, and you don't know where it is till you get somebody to locate it, and then we have to have it actually dig down and locate how deep it is, because we're digging holes in the ground and we don't want to cut a gas line or a fiber optic line. So we'll find all that and coordinate with the utilities to have them relocated before we come through and build a road. And we'll do the inspection. In the case of, this is Cambridge, kind of a before and after. Any of you drive that road or seen where that is, up beside Tyson headquarters? It had a very large eroding ditch along the side, and in some areas the road was falling into it. So the city council said, let's improve that. So my guys we had a consultant do the design, and then we did the inspection in-house. Most of the time these projects will contract inspection out, and we'll provide the administration kind of oversight for the whole project for the city. We're called, in the construction business, there's usually a consultant, might be an architect or an engineer, and there's usually an owner's representative. We act as the city's owner's representative, kind of watchdog in the whole project. Okay. Here's one. Anybody been on Emma Street lately? Okay, this is one. They should be finishing it up in the next couple of weeks, a before and after. I think there's another shot of it. The streetscape project. Those are the kind of projects that we work on. And then there's the number crunching. We help accounting keep track of the cost, make sure that the city's getting its money's worth, that the contractor pay estimates are evaluated, and we approve payment out of the CIP or bond funds. And then occasionally we'll help Sam and his guys if they have a question. We might help with some surveying. This past year, we worked with his folks to do a new pavement inventory and evaluate the pavements. We'll talk about here in another slide a GIS system. We put that on a map so you can tell where the good and bad streets are, and help Sam with where he might need to do some maintenance on some of the streets. We've got a representative on the traffic committee, which usually is the speed bump committee. Everybody wants speed bumps, but the ambulance and fire, the emergency response don't like them. If you've got a patient in an ambulance with a neck or back injury, you don't want to go cruising across a speed bump. So usually you don't want to do that. This is an option that I think we're exploring, aren't we? Speed cushions, which gives a track that's spaced for a fire truck, but if you're in a small car, you can't span that, so you're going to hit a speed bump. Working on speeding in some of the neighborhoods. The other regulatory function that we serve is floodplain management. Actually, Springdale does very well in the area of flood prevention. We had in excess of a 100-year storm back in April, and the amount of area that was flooded was or damaged by flooding, other than certain bridges and and streams was relatively small. We have 4 certified floodplain managers on staff, and we help evaluate elevation certificates for the building department. If you build a house in an area, in a flood-prone area, they're going to want to see that new house is being built to a level that's not going to let it flood, and so my guys will evaluate that. And then coming in 2018, Eric back there is working on the CRS program. That's a program where you can demonstrate that you have a higher standard of administration, of management of your floodplains, and you can we'll be able to get reductions in floodplain insurance rates out of that. So that's what we're working on. We hope to come in as a 7, 8, get about a 10% reduction starting out for anybody who has to have flood insurance in town. And then we have, we've built and maintain an engineering GIS system. Anybody know what GIS is? And we acquire new engineering data sets. We'll if we've got time, Eric can show off some of what we, the advantage to this is if you call in, while I've got you on the phone, I can find out all kinds of information on the computer. I can just call it up on my screen and it will tell me things about the property of interest, maybe a road. We use it a lot for floodplain questions. You can imagine we get a lot of floodplain questions after April. And so you can call in and give us an address and we can find out probably more stuff about your property than you wanted us to. How about you call in and you say, you've got an address there? Okay. And you say, am I in a floodplain? Or am I near a floodplain? Should I worry about flooding? Well, you can just punch in the address and right there, see the light green area? That's a floodplain. So if your house is in that edge, we can answer the question, yeah, you're potentially in a floodplain. Well, how high does the water get there? Yeah, we've got contours so we can tell how high the ground is there. That squiggly little black line will tell us the elevation of the floodplain in that area. So we can say, okay, your house is sitting at this level. Here's what the floodplain is going to do. You probably need to check into floodplain insurance. Or we can say, if it's a new house, say the empty lot there, that's where we can work with the builder and say, you need to build this house to this elevation to stay out of the floodwaters. So that's how we use GIS. That's floods. We've got, Eric's working on the drainage system. The storm drainage is buried underground, so where is it and where is it flowing? He's working on that. One of the new models that he's going to have is, what if you had a fuel tanker turnover and the tank ruptured and all the fuel went down the storm drain? Where's it going? Well, he's got we can click on it and it'll quickly chart in the underground storm system where's all that fuel going to go, so the fire department knows where to go downstream, block it. If it's running near your house, is your front yard going to catch on fire, those kind of things. And then for the stormwater, we can go to the downstream point where somebody's reported a pollution, and we can backtrace it back upstream to figure out who's polluting. Anyway, I think.
Does anybody have any questions for Brad?
Yes, sir.
So I don't know if you know or not, but Springdale High School has an engineering academy.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if you knew if they had any sort of relationship at all, because I feel like you could.
I haven't worked with them much. I worked with one of the university professors and my grandson to reach out to one of the East Labs. I think the one at the School of Innovation, but I haven't had anything to.
Yeah.
Haven't had any contact with them.
I was just kind of curious if you knew about it at all, but thank you.
I do not. I know there are lots of academies available.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Brad. Okay, we have two more, and then we'll start discussing job shadow, and we'll do another quick Q&A so you guys can get all your questions answered before you make any decisions. We have Springdale Water Utilities. Who here was on the tour on Saturday? Okay, so you guys got to see the wastewater treatment plant. I think that was super exciting. I know I enjoyed that. It's the first time I'd seen that one. Yeah, Brad Stewart kind of led the tour there. So this is Rick Polverenti, the gentleman we mentioned on the tour, and he's going to tell you a little bit more about Springdale Water Utilities.
There we go. Like Melissa said, my name's Rick Polvereni. I'm the COO and Director of Engineering for the water utility. Been there about 30 years. What I hope, and this slideshow has lots of little pieces to it, so I guess what we'll say here is that I hope to enlighten you on some of the things that we do. Basically, two things. We provide water to your home, and we dispose of the wastewater that comes from your home, from all the businesses in town, in our region. Let's start with water. So we'll go to the next slide right here. Oh, well, there you go. There's our mission statement, which is to provide adequate and dependable water and sanitary sewer services consistent with good business practices in a manner dedicated to preserving health, safety, and welfare of its users. Water, having clean water, is indescribable. You know, we couldn't exist today in our country without clean water and an ample supply of it, and that's what we're trying to do for the citizens of Springdale. It all started in Springdale on Stultz Road. There's a little building or a couple of buildings that maybe you've driven by, but that's the first water treatment plant that was built in Springdale. A little historic view of where we've been and where we're going. In 1901, the water district was formed. If you go down the list, construction of water and sewer systems in the early 20s. So the system is 95 years old. Some of the pipes in our system are literally 95 years old. Very old pipes that we have to take care of and modify. If you look down on the list there, in the mid-50s, we developed a wastewater treatment system. And then in 64 or 66 was the formation of the Beaver Water District. I don't know if you guys have been out there or intend to go out there, but Beaver Water District provides all the water for essentially northwest Arkansas. Bella Vista, Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, Fayetteville, and all the surrounding small communities that are close to this area. They provide the water that we drink. And you can see on the two lines of the graph there, about in the 50s, population started to increase here in Springdale. As population grows, we have to have more water. We have to be able to treat that. We're going to go on to the next slide right here. You're on a council. The city of Springdale has, its council as well. Well, the Water and Sewer Department has a commission, which is similar to a council that regulates, that controls what we do, directs where we go with the monies that are spent, that sort of thing. And it's comprised of 5 commissioners. There's an executive director, and then there's 2 layers under that. I'm on the right-hand side, and then the accounting bunch is on the left-hand side. All in all, there's probably a little over 100 employees at the water department. So it takes a bunch of people to make this thing happen. The green or blue wall doesn't really work well with the colors we've got on the screen, but in the center there, in a nondescript green color, is Springdale. And I'm going to let you filter through some of those slides right there. Springdale in the middle. You can see Bethel Heights, Lowell, Cave Springs, Elm Springs, Town, Johnson, and Fayetteville. And then this slide here that he just put on represents our service boundary. So we serve, Springdale Water Utilities, we serve from beyond Beaver Lake all the way over and including Elm Springs. We serve the south half of Lowell, we serve the north half of Johnson, and then all of that area in between there. Let's see where, oh, and the little star up there, that's the Beaver Water District. That's where their facilities are located. This is a chart showing growth, if you will, and it's really hard, and I can't even see it, but the early 80s are on the left-hand side, and it goes up to present day with 2017. And you can see the blue line, that's water customers, and the red line is sewer customers. So we have more water customers than we have sewer customers, because quite frankly, out in the rural areas, we don't serve sewer out there. But you can see the trend that's occurred. In the late 80s, you can see there's about 4 or 5% growth. And currently today, we're seeing about 2% growth, which is tremendous for a city of this size. The breakdown, where does this water go? You can see about 53, 54% of that water goes to commercial. That would be McDonald's. That'd be the shopping center down the corner. And residential, your homes. So 54% of the water that is served goes to residential and commercial entities. Seasonal water, about 7%, that's the water that's used in the summer to irrigate with. Some of you may have seasonal water meters at your home, and that's the water that goes through those to water lawns, that sort of thing. Industry is a huge part of Springdale. You know, we've got Tyson, Cargill, we've got industrial facilities over on the east side of town. They use about 40% of the water. And then bulk sales, 3.1%. That's water we sell to Town, essentially. Water treatment and distribution. We got two items there, quantity and quality. We also have pressure, volume, and storage. We have to instantaneously serve water to everybody's house, whether they want one of these red Solo cups full of water, whether they want a bathtub full of water, or maybe you want to fill your swimming pool in the springtime. We have to be able to provide that amount of water. What do you think the average size of a swimming pool is? Just guess. How many gallons? The average size of a swimming pool is anywhere from about 10,000 gallons to about 20,000. Now, if you look at what the city has, that's probably 50,000 gallons. That's a huge swimming pool. Let's look at the next slide right here. Here's our average pumping rates. Average daily use in the system is about 14 million, 15 million gallons a day. So that is 1,000 swimming pools are filled every day. Now, we're not filling 1,000 swimming pools, but industry is using about 40% of that. Residential is using, that 54%. So just to get a feel for how many swimming pools that would be, about 1,000. You can see our peak daily rate is about 27 million gallons in a day. We have the ability to pump from Beaver Water District 32 million gallons of water a day to serve over 35,000 individual customer accounts. Looking at that number, that 35,000 accounts, there's what, about 2.5 people, 3 people per house, 2 to 3 people per house. So you can see that that's 80, 90,000 people are being served by this system. The water system layout, I'll let you just pop this slide up here. This is a representation, one more. Well, those are the cities, one more. There's kind of a depiction of where the water lines lay. And then the last one here, we've got over 525 miles of piping, anywhere from 2-inch to 48 inches in diameter. You could crawl through that pipe. So, wastewater treatment and collection. This is what Brad helped you with the other day. There's a photo of the plant, and I guess, Melissa, you guys got to tour the plant, look at all the facilities out there? Well, there's an aerial view of that plant. Let me have the next slide here. One more. Average daily flow, I don't know what Brad told you the other day, but it's It's a little bit higher than these numbers. It's probably about 14 million, 12 to 14 million gallons of water go through that facility a day. Now, when it rains, those numbers all change, and that's what we're fighting for, is to reduce those. Sometimes when it rains, Brad was talking about a big storm we had this spring. We had over 40 million gallons of water come in that day. We have to treat that. We have to pay for that. You have to pay for it with your bills. So we're constantly have guys out in the field with camera trucks looking in sewer lines, trying to find these leaks so that when it rains, we don't have to treat that water. People's gutters are connected to the water. They may have a clean out in their lawn, a little cap. The lawnmower may have hit it, and all that water now is going into the sewer system, and we have to design our pipes bigger to be able to handle that. Let's see what we got. 28,000 sewer customers. The sewer is laid out similarly, and the wastewater plant, one more slide, well, there you go, 235 miles of sewer line piping. And then the plant is located at the apex of those two lines right there. So what about growth? Patsy talked about it. Brad deals with it all the time, trying to get roads big enough. We have to deal with the same sort of thing. Let's move on one more time. And it all revolves around master planning. We have to plan what we do. These projects cost millions of dollars to do. We can't just decide one day, oh, we're going to go do this or do that. We have to plan this out for years in advance so we know what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, to be able to match or interface with the growth that we have. There's a couple of statements there. You can read those on your own. But we've been doing master plans since the late 90s, early 90s. One more slide. And these are volumes. There's hydraulic analysis that goes with that. We have models of our wastewater system. We have a model of our water system. And we can plug in, if a new the Chick-fil-A comes in town or whatever, we know what kind of usage they would have. Or if a factory came in town, we would know what kind of usage they would have. We could plug it into the model, and then we can see if our systems can handle it. And we plan that. We work with all the communities around here. We integrate with Brad's department, Sam's department, and definitely with Patsy when we look at this regional approach to planning. One more slide. Over the next 3 phases, which is about 20 years, we've got over $160 million worth of work that has to be done. And those have to be taken care of with water and sewer rates. We don't get money from the city. We don't get money from the government. The money that is derived to pay for these improvements comes directly from water and sewer rates. And quite frankly, you have the lowest water and sewer rates of Bentonville, Fayetteville, Rogers, or the surrounding areas. Your water and sewer rates are the least. We have several operational incentives or challenges that we have to work on to make a balancing act, if you will. We have an implementation of a GIS system. We have a very similar system like Brad has. You can go on springdalewater.com, you can click in the engineering department, and you can pull up all our mapping. You can look at where water lines are, where sewer lines are, that sort of things. And that adds to developers. They like to know where things are so that they can see where to develop. We have to continue an implementation of our master planning. Every 5 years we take a new fresh look at it and redo those plans. We have regulatory challenges. We're regulated by the EPA. We're regulated by the Health Department. We're regulated by Arkansas Department of Environmental Quality. We're regulated by BRAD with stormwater that we produce. We have to meet all those requirements, know what they are, and they're constantly changing. So that is a key ingredient in what we do. If we go back so I can figure out what we're doing. System maintenance improvement. Like I said, reduction of water that goes into the sewer system when it rains. That's I&I, inflow and infiltration. We're constantly reducing that. And when we buy water from the Beaver Water District, when that water comes through all our piping, all the meters and everything like that, we lose some of that water. And that is an item that we're constantly focused on to help reduce the loss of water. So the future of water and sewer is system master planning. We got to maintain existing systems. We have to do system rehabilitation. We have to extend water and sewer to new areas. If you go out by the new interchange on Highway 112, we're putting a massive sewer system out there, spending $12.5 million to enhance that interchange and all those areas around there to be able to provide sewer for that. We have future regulations, and we have to improve fire protection because we do supply the water that's used for fire protection. One more. Keep going. All costs money, and it's a huge balancing act. So that's what we do at the water department. Questions?
I'm going to go to Dexter first. Take it, Dexter.
When hiring for your department, what kind of skills do you look for in an employee?
Well, you know, we look for a number of skills. We've got several different positions. We have construction workers, we have meter readers, we have office workers, we have accountants, we have HR, we have laboratory technicians that work at our wastewater. We have engineers. We have 3 engineers. We've got a drafting department. There are a whole gamut of different things that we look for. It's hard to say exactly, depending on the position.
Thank you.
Some of them require high school diplomas, some of them require degrees.
As you were talking about implementing new, I guess, companies that want to come here, for example, a Chick-fil-A or a Cheesecake Factory, if our water systems weren't capable of, with that capacity, it was too many gallons for us to handle, how would you go about that? Would you deny the business to come here, or would you try to expand our availability of water?
That's a really, really good question, and it works both ways. Sometimes we just can't do it, and there's not a lot we can do. What we try to do, though, is develop a partnership with that industry or with that entity and cost share with
Okay.
them to help improve that. For instance, if your home out in a rural area doesn't have water, we'll contribute up to $20,000 to aid in that construction. If it's a bigger development or something like that, we'll certainly look at it. We're business friendly, and we try to keep businesses coming to Springdale. So we'll work with them, but we can't do everything.
Okay.
So I've never really known this. Where does sewer waste go? Because I just don't know.
Well, first of all, it's treated, and it goes into Spring Creek, and eventually flows to Oklahoma. There it goes.
That's completely fascinating. I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So, how do big developments like the Children's Hospital, like, how do you guys have to prepare for things like that?
Well, that particular project, we were prepared for. 56th Street was built. We knew that things were going to be going in there. We put big water lines in place. And when the ballpark was developed, we built those sewer systems big enough to handle the leak. So when we go, like I was telling you, that $12.5 million project, that is sized for potential growth for the next 20 years. So when we build those projects, we try to build them big enough to handle what they'll see.
Thank you.
One last question, if anyone has one. All right.
So I think it was about a year ago that water pipe burst in Springdale. How did that affect you, and like what did you do to solve that or fix that problem?
Well, I got a call about 4 in the morning, and the guy that called me was frantic because we were worried we were losing our water storage tanks. We've got 25 million gallons worth of water sitting up in the northeastern region of town, and the pipe that broke was this big. You could drain that extremely quickly. We calculated with our modeling that that leak was contributing to about 15,000 gallons a minute. So a swimming pool every minute was exiting the pipe. Well, first thing we did was isolate it, shut the valves off. The ground literally shook when they were closing those valves. It was so violent. Isolated, allow the water
All right, thank you very much, Rick. We appreciate your information. Our very last speaker is Christian Garcia. He's been helping us do all the IT tonight, so he'll tell you a little bit about what he does.
Hey guys, I'm Christian Garcia. I work with the IT department for the city and was a part of the committee that helped put the youth council together. I mean, the IT department, we house both the IT department and the GIS department with which is me and Clayton over there, which he'll talk a little bit about the GIS side of things. But with the IT department, it's I kind of split my time between GIS, IT, and then we have 4 other guys that are just all IT. You know, we support all the departments in the city. Usually the way, you know, we have a way where they can put in a ticket and then they put in what the problem is, and then sometimes, you know, depending on our skill levels, each one of us kind of has something that we specialize in. So we assign the ticket to whoever is going to work on it. And, you know, it could be anything from someone their hard drive went out, and so we have to come take their computer, put in a new hard drive, and re-image everything, and then get it working for them again. I mean, it could be also like here, anytime there's a city council meeting, a planning meeting, or any special event like this, we come and record everything. You see all the cameras here, so we take care of all of this. And also there's Wi-Fi at the parks. We also manage that. And we have our own servers and Wi-Fi access points that we support also throughout all the city departments. So we really have a wide range of things that we cover. And I guess some of the GIS stuff, I don't know if Clayton, do you want to come talk about some of that?
Hi, I'm Clayton Sedbury. I'm the GIS manager in the IT department. I know Brad kind of touched on how his department uses GIS. So GIS in the IT department's role is to support departments that have staff to perform GIS functions. So we provide like database structure and support, really everything that they need to do their job. For the rest of the city, the departments that don't have any staff for GIS purposes, Christian and I do that work for those departments. So we'll do special projects like drive time analysis for the fire department, so they'll know where to put their fire stations in the future. Strange one we're doing right now is Bluff Cemetery. So mapping and cataloging all of those grave sites in the cemetery, where people, with the eventual goal of people being able to log on and do historical research, find a family member or someone they're looking for. We also maintain critical data sets that are used for things like dispatching fire department, police department to an emergency. So those would include like street center lines, address points. We work with the Springdale water utilities to get fire hydrant data so that first responders know where those are at all times. We also provide a lot of web apps to access city information. So if you're new to the city, or if you just need to look up, you want to know what your house looked like in 1999, you can do that through our website. So Eric's showing you this is the aerial photography. So we go back to 1999, if you're just curious. We also have an app called My Springdale app that shows, you can type an address or click on the map. Just type in 201 Spring Street, Eric. That's close enough. And it shows you things like the zoning district, whether you're in Springdale Water Service boundary, or your telephone provider, electric provider. So if you don't know those things and you're moving into the city, it's a handy tool that you can use to get some of that information. The GIS function in the IT department is relatively new. I've worked for the city for 15 years. I've held this position for about a year. So you're going to see more of this type of thing as time goes on. So that's it. That's all I have. Questions?
Oh, wow. Well, that was
man.
quick.
This is kind of off topic. Are you married to Mrs. Sudbury?
Yes, I am.
She's great.
She's all right. Yeah.
So, over the years, I've done some work with GIS, and I have kind of a two-part question for you guys. First of all, what software do you guys use to do this? Is it like ArcGIS or?
Yes, we use a suite of products from Esri on the ArcGIS Server. And we also use SQL Server as our database management system.
So my second part to the question was, I know in ArcGIS you have like a base map, and then you can put cumulative layers on top of that map. So what layers do you find yourself putting on the maps that you show to the residents of Springdale?
So the most common ones are things like zoning districts, wards, addresses, general streets, and aerial photography is used quite a bit as well.
As I'm sure you know, technology changes very quickly. So by the time you implement a certain type of technology, I'm sure, and it takes time to perfect it and get it working the way you want it to, I'm sure technology comes and you get something new. How do you deal with those changes because they are very quick?
Yes, they are. Software-wise, the company we use is called Esri, and they release an update probably every 6 months to a year. So it does get a little frustrating, but they keep the updates coming in such a way that you're not ever too far behind not to catch up. I mean, hardware-wise, that doesn't really affect the actual software.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to the open Q&A section. So can I have all the speakers come to the front? Now start thinking about which departments really, tickled your fancy. Which ones do you think sound interesting that you'd like to shadow? And if you have any additional questions, this is the best time to ask those. And also, you can shadow a department that's not up here today because we still have to go to the court and PD and fire and all that kind of stuff. So you don't have to just pick from these, but let's get our last questions answered here. Then we're going to go over some more information about job shadowing, and then we're going to cut to local services. So we'll hear from Downtown Springdale Alliance and Ozark Regional Transit, and then we're going to vote on officers, which is really exciting. So everybody come up here. I also have a really fun game that's, I think it's super fun, that's based on all the information you guys learned today. So hopefully you were paying attention. All right. So if you have any questions, shoot them out.
So for information systems, what prerequisites do you guys look for when hiring new people?
Well, really it depends. We usually, we always want someone that's very good with networking. So, I mean, if you pretty much, if it requires a college education, so you would want to study computer science or there's even information systems you could study, and then they do specialties and things. So, I mean, you could specialize in like in networking especially, because that's a big thing we do. And then, but then there's also other things, if you want to focus more on hardware or software, there's also things like that. And then also if you want to go more into the GIS side, I mean, also looking for probably education and some experience in that field.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions? Yes.
For the city codes, how do you report something, like, because there's some people in my neighborhood that are making it not look very nice.
I'll give you a business card.
Okay.
The other option, which is the easiest, is send anything by email to codeenforcement@springdalear.gov. Just all one word, code enforcement at springdalear.gov.
I get a lot on Facebook. People will send me a message with a photo they took in their neighborhood and their address and says, my neighbor's doing this, please make it stop. And I will forward that on to Misha and she will take it from there. So that's another option, is through social media.
So for code enforcement, how do you, what kind of skills and education do you need to be part of your team?
You need to be a go-getter. You need to have the ability to think and reason, to make decisions on your feet, to be a people person. So if you're asking me, is there a certain degree that you need, certain education, I look past the education and the degree. There are certain, I guess, expectations that the city has for many of our jobs that are on our job description. But if you're asking for me specifically, what I would look for and what I would hire, it was that people person, that go-getter, that self-motivated person, that person that loves their community and wants to make a difference. That's what I'd look for.
Thank you.
I got a
You're not in this panel unless you sit over there. Is this you? Sam asked it, does it cost anything if someone doesn't fix their property or bring their property into compliance, that's what we call it, does it cost them anything if the city goes and cleans up their property? Yes, it costs them a lot, actually. So the taxpayers, your family, if you have jobs, you're paying taxes to the city. The taxpayers would be responsible for going out to someone's private property and cleaning their property. Well, you're paying for that. So we want to make sure that we're responsible with taxpayer dollars. So we require those people to pay that back. And it's not just a regular charge. To mow a yard, it could easily cost them $400, $500, $600 just to mow their yard. Now that seems astronomical, but again, taxpayers are paying for the employees, the staff, the vehicles, the use, the equipment, and we need to make sure that we're responsible to get that money back, to spend it on things like potholes and animal services buildings and new technology that's changing all the time. So yes, it costs a lot.
For code enforcement, like my subdivision, it has a POA, and they have like their own enforced codes and stuff. Do you work together with POAs, or are they their own?
They're actually their own. We'll help them and we'll communicate with them, but sometimes a POA restrictions, they are far and above what an ordinance or a code is. So we can't enforce anything or help with anything that is above what an ordinance or code by the city council. We can help, we can communicate, we can educate, but if it goes far and above what's written and what's been ratified by our council, we're hit that wall.
Okay, thank you. And then also for public, is that okay? For public works, what about like traffic cones? I know that's a weird question, but do you do anything with that, or do you store them, or where are they stored?
The what was it?
Traffic cones, are they stored at public works facilities, or where are they stored?
The MUTCD, for instance, is a national program of, I guess you could call that as traffic codes. Is that the word?
Cones.
Oh, the cones, I'm sorry. We do have them at Public Works. Are you needing to borrow some? Okay. Well, we do loan them out to people every once in a while, but yeah. We have a lot of them where we have to do work zones from time to time. So, yeah, we have stuff like that. And a lot of other things.
I have a question for animal services. What are you looking for when you hire somebody to come work at the animal shelter?
Well, I mean, not to totally steal Misha's thunder, but a lot of the same things. The majority of any of our jobs really don't require an advanced degree. I mean, we hire you right out of high school as long as, well, I mean, you have to like animals, but I'm not going to hire the person just because they're like, I really just want to play with puppies and kittens all day. Because while we do get to do that sometimes, that's actually a very small part of our job. We have different job duties based on the job description. We do have people that are caretakers that their responsibility is actually cleaning and scooping and mopping and all that good stuff. We also do have, the front desk staff and office staff that are more responsible for interacting with the public. So having a nice fresh face at the front desk when people walk in, you want it to be inviting and welcoming. We also do have animal control officers that are very similar to code enforcement officers. We do work together with them, particularly regarding chickens. So stop getting them, guys. I'm just saying, unless you live on an A1, you can't have them. But yeah, well, I mean, if that's your thing, But so our animal control officers are also code enforcement officers. So we don't have as many privileges, I guess, or responsibilities as the police, but we do obviously support them, especially if they get into a situation where there's a dog there and they're like, hey, we got to get the guy. Can you get the dog for us too, so that we don't get bit? So, I mean, really just level-headed, self-starter type people. We do a lot of medical things. We don't have a veterinarian on staff, and so there's things that we can't do, but there's a lot of things that we can. So things like vaccinating dogs and cats on intake prevents things like the parvo puppy that we had at the shelter today. Making sure that you're able to obviously follow protocols as we have them laid out. Because it sounds really easy. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna go scoop some poop and call her good. But if there's a breakdown in the way that people clean the shelter, then we have problems with disease outbreaks with distemper and parvo and giardia, coccidia, things that people can also get from the animals as well. So, I mean, it really is, it sounds like a kind of menial job where you're just cleaning up animal waste all day, but it really is very important that you care about what you're doing and do it right. But also, we look for folks that are able to leave it at work. Compassion fatigue is a really big part of a lot of jobs in the city, particularly police, fire, folks that are in it, first responder, dealing with a lot of stuff. But animal services is also a department where that really is a big issue. We do have a lot of turnover in our staff because it is very difficult sometimes to deal with things that you see. I mean, you have a dog that comes into the shelter that hasn't been fed in 4 weeks and looks like just a rack of bones. That was just a couple weeks ago we had that. And you get really angry at people, but education is one of our best tools. So to be able to communicate with folks in town, there's a lot of cultural differences in Springdale. There's a lot of socioeconomic differences in Springdale. And so the way that I treat my animals and the things that I do for them might not be something that someone can afford or, even know that they should be doing. A lot of folks in town think that the rabies vaccine is the only thing that they need to get for their dogs and cats because that is required by state law, not just city ordinance. But they have never heard of parvovirus or panleukopenia in cats or calicivirus, and then their animal gets really sick from something that could be prevented. So education is a large part of our job too. A lot of people want to come work for animal services because they like animals better than people, they always say. But you have to like the people. You have to want to help the people so that you can help the animals by helping the people. So, yeah.
All right, so.
yet, so we have plenty of water to at least cool things down. But we did in fact lose 20 buses. We're in the process now of borrowing buses, leasing buses from other transit systems around the country. They actually given us buses, signed the title over to us, and so we're slowly getting back on our feet with that. But a lot of people don't understand that we lost our GPS tracking on our buses, we lost our bicycle rack, we lost our Wi-Fi, we lost our radios, being able to talk from bus to bus and bus to dispatch. And so we were able to put buses back out there within 9 days of that fire happening and have every route covered. But we actually behind the scenes been kind of limping along. So we're slowly getting back on our feet with that. I'm happy to address any questions about that. I know we're short of time, so
So we're actually going to have Kelly go right after him, and then you guys can ask questions to both of them. So Kelly's going to come right up here. And she's going to be quick because we have 2 things we have to do before I let you guys go. I know your parents are waiting for you at 8 o'clock, so we're going to go really fast.
Well, I was thinking to make everybody wake up. Does anybody know the words to Bohemian Rhapsody? Yeah, well, that would always be good to kind of get everybody roused up, but I'm not going to make you do that. So I am going to go really, really fast. My name is Kelly Sire, and I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Springdale Alliance. Has anybody heard of this organization before? Couple of people. Good. Okay, then I have a bunch of newbies to teach you about all of this. The Downtown Springdale Alliance has been in existence only, 2.5 years, just shy of 3 years, and it is an organization that is really based on the idea that downtown Springdale has a lot of opportunity to become a very cool place and really provide a dynamic experience for folks that live in Springdale and people who visit Springdale. So our mission is to continuously advance the value of downtown Springdale through strategic leadership, cultivated partnerships, and positive advocacy, which is a lot of complex way of saying that essentially we are here to build partnerships and make friends and make downtown a really great place to visit and work and live. We have 3 team members, so we have a very small but mighty team. Our first person is Amber Paradin. She's our Director of Programming, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the kind of programming that we do. We have Hannah Potter, who is the Director of the Downtown Springdale Farmers Market, which is a big part of what we provide as an organization. And then I am the Executive Director, and I've just been in place since May, so I'm still kind of learning the ropes on a lot of this, but we're getting there. There's a lot of dynamic things that we do, so it's a pretty exciting place to be. So first I want to kind of give you an idea of what the defined footprint of downtown Springdale is, because we really focus every single thing we do to fall within just one single geographic area. And that doesn't mean that we only work with organizations or individuals that fall within that geographic area, but it means that the programming and the assets that we're trying to develop for Springdale will fall within that area. So just to give you kind of an idea, one boundary would be Thompson or 71B. We kind of include Springdale High School, even though it falls on the other side of 71 from downtown, just because it's right there, it's very close, and it's a big driver of activity and just things that are happening that influence downtown. And similar to that, we also include the library and Murphy Park as kind of part of the downtown footprint, even though it doesn't really show up in here. We talk a lot about the activities and things that they're doing because they really do influence us in this area. Then we go over to Huntsville Avenue, that direction. The far boundary on this side is 265, so like the Jones Center would fall within the boundary, the Springdale Airport, those would be kind of 2 big markers on that side. And then the side to the south would be, let's see, I guess it's Quant Avenue and Cottle Avenue, which kind of picks up where the Northwest Health Center is. So that sort of gives you an idea of everything that falls within it. So lots and lots of things that are happening in our downtown. And I would say, as far as how you compare us to other downtowns in the region, you'd be amazed at how many really big assets fall within this really pretty small geographic area. So that means we have lots of things to think about. So big part of our job, and really the reason why we exist as an organization, is to help to implement a master plan that was developed for development and enhancement of downtown Springdale. And this was a process that was really driven by public input, as well as looking at what the resources and assets are that already exist here. And so there was a lot of communication and people giving input about what they thought would really enhance downtown, what we need to keep, what we need to change, how we need to make things better. So our organization, while we don't necessarily do all of the things that influence that plan or a result of that plan, we're really responsible for making sure that that plan keeps moving. So there's some really big items that fall into that. And so our job is to make sure it's top of mind. It's to make sure that when things are happening that need public input, that we rally the troops and we bring everybody together and we really try to communicate a lot about what's happening so that the taxpayers and the citizens of Springdale really feel like they're a part of the decisions that are being made. Very, very important. Resource development is another big part of what Downtown Springdale Alliance does. And something that's kind of interesting, there are a lot of projects that we work on, but they're not actually our projects. So, for example, there are other organizations or individuals that on occasion will find an opportunity to do a really cool project in downtown, and they go and they find funding to do that. Oftentimes that funding comes from the Walton Family Foundation, but there are other foundations that help to support programs and projects that happen in downtown. But those individuals are not the ones that will actually manage the money and how it's spent. So the money will come to the Downtown Springdale Alliance, and we will then work with whoever it is that's actually doing the project to make sure that whatever needs to be paid for is paid for, that it's all being done in a very methodical and deadline meeting way so that projects stay on track. So that means that we get our hands into a lot of things that maybe we didn't initiate, but we make sure that they're influencing downtown in a really positive way. We also we look for projects that we identify or that we hear about, and when there are opportunities for us to go and try to find funding sources for that, we also do that. So it kind of comes from both directions. Programming is a big, humongous part of what we do. When you think about a really awesome downtown, what do you think about? What makes it feel vital and exciting to you? I'm curious. Yes, ma'am.
I think of like a farmer's market or just things being like going on. Like I'm comparing it to downtown Fayetteville. There's always something going on.
Yes, you are magical music to my ears. I love that. That's really, really important. And so while we do work on a lot of big kind of infrastructure projects, we recognize that the way for people to know that things are happening in downtown, the way to get people to consider shopping in stores or coming to restaurants or checking out the pubs and the different things that are here is to bring in events that will actually attract them here for the first time. So we're not only thinking about you guys who live in Springdale, we're also thinking about people within the region and even tourists that come from outside of Arkansas that want to spend time and spend money here. And so it's really important that we find ways to make it dynamic and always changing. So our programming is a really huge part of that, to make sure that we keep things interesting and that we provide a lot of different ways for people to feel connected regardless of what their interests are or their backgrounds, their cultures. You know, we want to do a little bit of something for everybody so you all feel like this is your downtown. It's very important. We work a lot with a whole number of organizations, some of those in Springdale. We're trying to do more to bring arts to downtown. I know that's something probably all of you would love to see. Mural projects, maybe a sculpture garden someday, all kinds of cool things that really show creativity and encourage people to be creative. So we're thinking about that for sure. Okay, go ahead. So these are just some examples of some of the programming. Some of these you guys may have actually attended. Like one that we have coming up in just about a month is Christmas on the Creek. And that is when we light the largest live Christmas tree in the state of Arkansas. Very, very cool. That's right here in downtown. And we have a Christmas tree that's coming all the way from Wisconsin, from this huge tree farm. They actually supply trees to movies and all sorts of interesting things. That's actually being trucked down here by Tyson Foods, and then we'll set it up. It'll be in Shiloh Square. So that's an example of the kind of thing that we work on to really bring the community together and celebrate together. Lots of other examples. The big thing that we have coming up a week from this weekend, so the 26th through the 29th, we're starting a brand new festival called Ozarktoberfest, and it is a celebration of culture and music and food and all sorts of things that have to do with the Ozarks. So it's not just Springdale centric, it's really intended to be a regional celebration. So you guys definitely check that out on our website and come to it, because some of the events are over 21, but a lot of them are open to absolutely anybody. So go ahead. I'm not going to go through all of this with you, but economic and business development is another large part of what we do. And really what that comes down to is just us trying to make sure that the businesses that are already here feel supported, that we talk about them, that we encourage them, we find ways to promote what they're doing, but we are also really focused on trying to make sure that new businesses look at opportunities in downtown Springdale. That's how we're going to become more vital, that the empty storefronts that you see, and you still see them in downtown, that we start filling those things up with opportunities that bring both you guys and everybody else who comes through Springdale back and back and back to downtown. That's how we become vibrant and we continue to grow the things that we do. Very, very important.
Where are you getting your inspiration for the ideas for the renovation? Are you getting it from the people, or is it just looking, for example, Dixon Street, or where are you getting these ideas from?
That is a really great question, and it's kind of from a lot of different sources. When we look at ways to renovate things, for example, Luther George Park, that's located just over this direction. Big, huge park. It's kind of feeling a little old, a little bit worn out, and there's definitely a lot of better things we could do with that. So we have a public input session that allows the community to come and give us ideas based on what they enjoy doing, what they think that particular piece of land could offer. But we also work very closely with landscape architects, with people who are in the field of development, to consider what are the natural assets of that property. So like in this example, there's a stream that runs through the back of it. So what can we do to make that stream actually enhance the park, not just kind of be there? So we look at a lot of different things that we know the community needs, we know people enjoy doing, and we kind of mash all of that up into a big plan that then we present to the city council to see if it's the direction that they want to go, and if so, then we know that we can move forward.
And then kind of relating to the same question, what is the idea or general purpose for the renovation of downtown? Like, what are we shooting for?
What are we shooting for? It's a great question. It's actually a very big question. But I would say that ultimately we're shooting for creating a place that just feels like it has vitality. A downtown is really the heart of any community, or it should be. And a lot of cities, you hear about this happening everywhere. This is not limited to Springdale by any means, where the heart has gone out of the community because a lot of development has pushed further out, and so people's traffic patterns and their living patterns and suburbs and all of that kind of pull them away from the downtown. But where you find downtowns, you find a lot of historic properties, you find things that just have some charm and really retain the character of that community. So what we're really attempting to do is to return that charm and that vitality to an area that is the heart of Springdale. And to do that, we need more housing that people can afford to live in. We need to fill every store, every shop. We need to have more restaurants. We just have to have a lot more for people to do. We want to make it walkable. There's all sorts of things that we can do to make sure that this is just a really cool place to live and visit. That's our goal.
One more question.
Do you know what started the fire in?
Weirdest thing, that's not a short answer, unfortunately. Basically, the wind that night was blowing 40 miles an hour with 60-mile-an-hour gusts. Backing up just a little bit, we had in our fleet, we had several first and second generation
clean burning diesel engines. And what that means, first and second generations, means that the catalytic converter on the exhaust system collects the diesel particles, and then you had to physically put a apparatus on it to burn those particles out. And so the bus was running. We were going through that process of burning those particles out. The wind was blowing from the southwest. The bus was pointed toward the northeast, so the wind was blowing straight up the tailpipe. And so all that exhaust and all that heat to burn out those particles was not being allowed to exhaust off. So one of two places flashed. It was either the catalytic converter itself and the subfloor, 4 inches above it, got so hot that it started to fire, and of course the wind fanned that. Or at the very tailpipe, it also got hot enough to start burning the rubber coating around the rear bumper. So one of those two things actually flashed. Of course, the wind fanned that flame, and unfortunately, all of our buses were parked northeast of that particular bus too. So once the first one started, the wind blew it right over 19 more buses. And on that note.
Thank you very much, Jeff and Kelly.